Hello, everyone. I hope you can see me and you can hear me, and I hope you can see the presentation. If you do, please type that in the chat. Meanwhile, we are today working on teaching reading with Prepare Ukrainian Edition. My name is Tatiana Shelepko. I'm Cambridge University Press CLT consultant, and we have a lot of work and a lot of material to cover today. I hope it will be entertaining as usual, and I hope you will learn some new ideas that you would want to use with your students in the classroom, and some food for thought as usual. So, teaching reading with Prepare Ukrainian Edition. I wouldn't say it's very much different from teaching reading with any other book, because methodology is most probably the good level methodology will let you work with any book for sure. But why with Prepare Ukrainian Edition? Because this course shows you how exactly it should be working in the new Ukrainian school with the new Ukrainian school standard, state standard, and how it correlates with the new program, including all the ideas, both about assessing students at the end, with working with their levels, developing their life skills, developing their critical thinking, creative thinking, and all of the kinds of thinking, the ability to learn, and so on. So before we move to the presentation itself, a few facts about reading. This is what we're going to cover at the beginning, and this will be the entertaining part. How reading works as a system, particularly in the new Ukrainian school, and how we work at the reading lessons. These are three key notes, key points at this presentation, and we will start with reading, facts about reading. But before that, some warm-up activity, I would say, or some ideas I have. So how we usually perceive contemporary, modern teenagers. Modern teenagers for us are usually those who don't like reading, who don't like culture, who don't like many things, and who want to do things that we didn't do when we were younger. This is a typical phenomenon, which is actually called juvenoia. This juvenoia is something when it's an exaggerated feeling when you think that when you were a teenager, life was different, and today's teenagers are bad. This is very typical for any generation, and actually what we can see from the start of the whole notion, teenager as a notion, actually developed in 1950s. So even less than 100 years ago, we started talking about teenagers as a part of society. Before that, we had young people and older people. We had kids, children, and adults. But in 1950s, right after the war, the main studies on teenagers appeared, and that's when I will talk. Actually, I will talk about this more at another practical session. So I will tell you about it at the end of the webinar. But the main idea is that today teenagers read most probably even more than we did. The point is, what are they reading? So we are there to motivate students to read things that will develop them as personality. And it's not only about fiction books. it's also the ability to use proper resources on the internet and read things there. Because actually, as for me, I read much more these days from the internet, and hopefully I spend more time reading something nice, something good, something that you have to search for, but not just it pops up and you read it for nothing. So how we usually spend time these days. This is the picture, and I believe that you can, most of you can relate. And I can tell for sure that when I meet with friends, we have moments like that at the picture. And this is something very, very strange, we must say, yeah? Something that never happened before. But look at the picture of 100 years earlier. Absolutely the same situation. People here are sitting and reading all together as a family, sharing books after they read one, reading out something when it's funny, and so on. So they are sharing the same information. I couldn't find a picture with people reading newspapers, because that might be more common. Yeah, this family is quite sophisticated one, but still people reading media and people reading any kind of information and then sharing it with each other and then coming back to reading it again is normal for our society. And it's normal that sometimes we get into our phones, read something, and then share. Again, our task is to facilitate this process and teach our students read critically and read usefully. Okay, right, another picture to compare. Moving on, look at this. Can you read this text in like 1 minute? Okay, I hope ready. So what does this text tell us? That any sign system happens to be in different parts of our lives, right? We communicating right now, it's also a sign system. We talking to each other through the internet is a huge set of 0-1 combinations, right? And music, it's 7 notes and hundreds of thousands of combinations of these notes. Letters and words and sentences and discourses coming into different combinations form texts. But reading as a skill, reading as a process is not just being able to decode the information in some amount of time. It's rather about understanding, having pleasure, and filling it with your own background and your own perception of the world and your understanding of the links in this text. That's why texts should be linked. I'd say that's why sentences in the text for reading should be properly linked, and there should be different tasks around this text. So we develop not the reading technique when we can read a lot of words in 1 minute, but we develop the skill around it, how to understand, how to prepare for reading, how to work on post-reading processes, and how to think properly while reading. And yeah, finally coming to some facts about reading. Your task will be now to look at the slide for, I guess, 3 minutes maximum. Look at the slide and write down somewhere in your notes or notebooks, write down true or false. There we go. It should be 1, true, 2, false, for example, 3, false, and so on. You don't have to write it in the chat, but if you wish, you can. Just as a full set with 11 numbers. Not one by one. You don't have to do it one by one. Don't have to type it in the chat. Just look through all the points and think whether it's true or false. Time's up. All right, let's look at all of them. First, reading protects you from prison. Very interesting fact. Oh, sorry for this picture. Reading and understanding, for sure. Reading stories protects students, protects people from criminal future. This is something American sociologists found out. And what they say is those who read more by the age of 8, different stories for children and so on, who get familiar with as many fairy tales as possible and any literature for children, they tend to be more social. That's the point. They tend to be more social because reading, this is something that teaches us, teaches us because when we read, we go through, our brain goes through the same processes as if we lived through a situation. Almost the same. Yeah, of course, when we live through something, that's a proper lesson. But when we read it, this is something that might prevent us from difficult lessons in our lives. And this is something that teaches us life, teaches us about life, teaches us about world. So the point is that we kind of live through some situations when we read together with the character. And when we're children, it's much easier for us to personalize this character, personalize what we read. And that's why when we read good literature, when we are children, we can become much more social when we're grown-ups. Okay, another one. The longest word consists of 189 letters. That's an entertaining fact, which is false. Actually, the longest word, and I was trying to read it today, but I couldn't manage. The longest word is, again, 189,819 letters long. This is the name of a very giant protein in our body that has something to do with our muscles. Yeah, it lives, this huge word lives inside us. And it takes 3 hours to read out, over 3 hours to read out the whole word. And the short word is titin, I guess, in English. This is what it looks like. If you're interested, you can read about it, but I find it fascinating. Why would chemists create such a long word? I don't know. I'm not sure any of them would pronounce it, ever. All right. Previously, people had to chain books to shelves. This is another interesting fact that might motivate your students to read as well, because previously reading was a huge privilege. Very few people could read, and in medieval time, they had to chain books to the shelves so thieves wouldn't steal them, and they were so valuable that someone could just steal and try to sell it or something. I don't know. But the point is that there was very limited access to reading books. Those books that are free, downloadable these days for all of us who have access to the internet. And that's a fascinating fact for me. And also, we didn't change much. There is information that is still limited for many people, but now this kind of chained books look a little bit different, again, in the internet. Okay, the longest sentence ever printed consists of 314 words. False. It consists of 832 words. And I was thinking that maybe this is something, again, to do with chemists or with some medical things or whatever. But this is actually a sentence which is not listing words, listing of something, medication or whatever. But this is an actual sentence that makes sense with all the words linked in it, and you can read it normally in Miserables by Victor Hugo. So in this book, you can find the longest sentence ever. And again, one thing to motivate your students to read. Maybe not in English, because this one would be too difficult. Okay, moving on. Habitual reading makes you kinder. That is true. How it works? When we read, our brain signals our other organs, and our brain creates oxytocin, the hormone which is well known as a love hormone. And this hormone is responsible for friendship, for trust, for empathy, and for all the good emotions. We usually experience the most oxytocin when we are born. So this is the bond between a child and the mother. We experience oxytocin when we walk the dogs or play with the dogs, when we hang out with our family and friends. This is oxytocin that is also produced while reading, and it is produced in large amounts, not as large as when you fall in love, but of course it is an important thing that reading is not a machine process, and it's not about the text. It's about how our imagination tricks the mind that something is actually happening. Okay, yeah. And the reason our already overloaded brain devotes so much precious time and space to allowing us to get lost in stories that without stories we'd be toast. Stories allow us to simulate intense experience without actually having to live through them. And I noticed that when I entered the university last year, and I started reading a lot every day, not just scientific literature, but some fiction literature, which I need for work, I realized that my brain works much better. Even if I spend 15, 20 minutes during the day reading in a calm circumstances, not in the underground where everything and everybody is watching you, but at home after work or in the morning before I go to work, if I spent even 10-15 minutes reading fiction, not news, not media, not Facebook scrolling, but some good book, the day is much better. All right. The most famous book thief stole 1,000 books. Actually, he stole 23,000 of rare books out of 268 libraries. I would love to meet this guy, maybe, because I think he knew what to steal. So most probably he's a very well-educated person, but something went wrong when he became a criminal. Anyways, his name is Steven Blumberg. You can Google this story about him, and I also find it fascinating that why would someone steal rare books? But when you think about it, you never know. I once didn't want to return the book to the library because I liked it too much, but I did. Okay, slow reading protects eyes. Actually, this is wrong. This is false. Fast reading protects eyes. And this is also an interesting fact. When we read fast, we see not just letters, we don't focus that much, and we don't look, we are more relaxed. When we read fast, our eyes are more relaxed because other parts of the brain work stronger, the ones that are responsible for seeing the whole picture. So when we read in sentences, not in words, as the technique of fast reading says, when we read in discourses, our eyes are actually resting. Harry Potter is one of, so that's what I meant. It's about the quality of how we read, but not about the quantity of how much we read. And our eyes are resting when we have quality read. And at the same, sorry, I wanted to go to the next fact, but let's stop here a little bit. So when we are reading, there are two main processes happening, cognitive processes happening in our brain. This is top-down process and this is bottom-up process. The stronger our background is, the faster we read. And this is bottom-up process when we use our background knowledge to read something, and we might already know a lot about the topic, and in this case we would read much faster, most probably to see something new in this piece of information. Another process is rather about decoding what we're reading and understanding separate words. So these two processes are going together, but the more knowledgeable we are, the faster we decode the words that we see. All right, what else do we have? Okay, the fun fact. Harry Potter is one of 3 bestsellers in the world. Very true, because up till last year, 500 million copies were sold. Compared to the Bible, which is supposed to be 6 billion copies sold, and compared to Mao Zedong quotations, set of quotations, which has 800 million copies sold, mostly, as you understand, in China. Okay, another one. Every fourth teenager is illiterate. Unfortunately, this is true. Every fifth adult in the world cannot read at all and cannot write. Every fourth teenager cannot read a simple sentence. But compared to even 100 years ago, when reading was a privilege, much bigger percent was illiterate. And the compulsory education made all of us, the people from mass, made us much more educated. And this is something that here, this Juvinoia, which I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, doesn't make any sense, because these days teenagers have much bigger access to any kind of information, and much easier access to study how to read. So what we need to do is not make them read letters and words, but make them read what's appropriate to read. Okay. Napoleon read 200 words in a minute. It was 2,000 words in a minute. I can't imagine that. And also there is a fact about Honoré de Balzac, who could read a novel in half an hour. That was super fast reading. But as we mentioned before, it's not about teaching yourself to read super fast. It's about background knowledge. The more we know, the faster we read. That's why pre-reading tasks are very important, but we will come to this later. Your eyes look in different directions when reading. This is an interesting fact. One eye is looking at one letter, another eye is usually looking at another letter. And also our eyesight separates and diverges during reading, and with both of our eyes we see different pieces of signs, different pieces of texts. So the broader picture we can see, the less movements our eyes make, the better they rest while reading, and so on. But again, if interested, Google it. You will find a lot of interesting information on that. How do we teach reading at the lessons? So look at the time. Great. So how do we teach reading? Effective reading lessons often contain these phases, 3 phases. This is pre-reading, reading itself, and follow-up. You can see on the slide that before reading tasks, what they do, they activate all the background knowledge we have on the particular topic. This is why we shouldn't ever omit this stage, because it's essential for the quality of how our students will be reading, how we spark interest in the topic. Okay, the reading itself has also several cycles, with easier tasks while reading, with more complicated tasks. That depends. We will see how it works in the book. And follow-up phase, reacting on what you've learned, doing something similar, talking, discussing the text, writing the similar text, or your reflection on this text, and so on. Okay, reading sub-skills. Reading for specific information and in detail. I believe you all know what it means, but if needed, you can print screen this slide. But again, reading for gist is just skimming the text, seeing most probably it's for the topic, to understand what the topic of this text is, what it is about. And it's done in a very fast way. Reading for specific information, when we are looking for something in the text, we don't need to see the whole picture. We need to find specific information. And this is something we actually do in our everyday life. When we go to the restaurant, we wouldn't read the whole menu. When we look at the news, we wouldn't read all the news in the world. We would read something that refers to our country and most probably our field of work, something that might influence us. So reading for specific information, again, shouldn't be omitted. It shouldn't be all done in detail, because with the amount of information today, our brain might explode if we read everything in detail. All right. And reading in detail, we read, we stop at some point, and this might be connected again with some search or reading for pleasure or extensive reading, but this is not something we very much do at the lessons. Reading for detail is usually very individual process. So reading sub-skills, how they are presented in the books. Unfortunately, my slides moved a little bit when I uploaded them, so you will see all the answers here. So in reading for the gist, the example of the task would be choose the best title, or match the headings and paragraphs. Then reading for specific information would be find answers to some specific questions, true or false, as well. Then reading in detail, make notes on the topic, find differences between two texts. But again, this is something we don't normally do in the classroom. There might be tasks like that, but they require much more time and most probably the whole lesson. But usually it's individual project work or just reading for pleasure in your free time. Okay, now reading do and don'ts, true or false. Again, true or false for you. I have a true or false Friday today. Before learners read, we should pre-teach all the vocabulary in the text which they don't know. Is it true? Is it false? It would be nice if you could type in the chat 1, 2, 3, 2, true or false, all together, so we don't receive messages all at once. One more, true or false. Please type those in a line. 1, 2, 3, true, false, not one by one, so we don't have a mess there. Oh, thank you. Somebody did it in a line. Great. Thanks a lot, Anna, Nina. Oh, great. Thanks. Now I can see the picture better. Okay, we've got a lot of correct answers. Let's move to the next slide to see the truth. Oh, sorry, it's not visible here for some reason. Anyways, before learners read, we should pre-teach all the vocabulary in the text which they don't know. No, this is false. Why? They need to know all the vocabulary that they need to know for this topic. For example, if there are some words that don't have to be learned for this particular topic, but students don't know this word, we don't have to pre-teach it, because one of the skills, one of the reading skills for life is to withdrawing the meaning of particular words we didn't know before from the context. This is an important part, so we don't have to pre-teach everything. We need to pre-teach what is essential. Learners should always have a clear task in mind when reading. Very true, very true. So they don't read for no reason. If I have to read something for no reason, I hate it. And even pleasure is a very, very clear reason, right? When we think about tasks like read the text and that's it, I don't know why I do it. I'm not interested in it. I don't have. There is no competition with the book. There is no game. There is no fun, right? But when I have read and match to the picture, then it makes sense. Okay, I need to read this information to match to the picture. Because when we read for information, when we read for gist in real life, it's usually not about reading itself as a process. I read every day loads of emails because I need to answer those emails, because I need to consult teachers who ask me questions in their emails. So then I receive the salary for my job, you know, and so on. So everything should have a very proper, clear aim. And we should always give learners a time limit for reading task. This one is debatable because sometimes it depends on the task, of course. If we are reading for gist, we give them time limit for sure. But when we are reading for detail, children have different skills. We have multiple levels in the classroom, and everybody works in their own pace. So depending on the task, the more collective the task is, then we set the time limit. But if the task is individual or project task, we can set the deadline. Yeah, so it's done till tomorrow, or it's done till the next week. Then yes, important to set time limits during the lesson, but sometimes it can go different direction and you will have to correct that. All right, but I usually set time limits. Another one, true or false. So now it's 4, 5, 6 in a line, and you put it down, true or false. I will wait a little bit till we have many answers. Okay, I will answer. Is that visible here? No. I will tell you what, all of them are false. And this is funny how it works with tests, right? When you think, okay, there are 3 on the page, something should be false for sure, and you choose what is false or what is true, I would say. But all of them are false. Why? The first reading task should always be a gist task. No, the first reading task is pre-reading task. And it means that it most probably is before we open the book. 5, learners should read texts more than once with a different task each time. False, because each task requires usually reading the text twice. So first time we get familiar with the task, then first time we get familiar with the task, then we read the text, then we look at the task again, and then we reread whether we've done it properly. So it's at least twice for each task, depending on the task, of course, but usually it's like that. When learners are writing answers to a reading task, they should use full sentences. Not always, right? It's when it's true or false, they can just correct the mistake. That's not about telling the whole sentence. That's about catching the sense of the text we've read. How does it work at the new Ukrainian school? So when we look at the new Ukrainian state standard, this is, it's very, very small font here. Sorry. I hope you can see it in a bigger perspective than I do. No, still very small. All right. What's the point here? There are 3 groups of results starting from the next year, from the next September. We will have 3 groups of results. Previously, we had 4 types of control: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Now we have 3 groups of results. First is the group that is called perceiving oral and written information in the foreign language, using also using direct and indirect cross-cultural communication. This is what it's called. I had it written in Ukrainian, so I'm translating on the way. Once again, perceiving written and oral information in the foreign language in direct or for direct or indirect cross-cultural communication. Here we have both receptive skills. This is actually listening and reading. So they are now grouped together because they are receptive skills. In general results, we have general results for this group of results. Perception of written or print text. Here in general results. Then for specific results, we have descriptors that tell us what students should do in this particular kind of tasks. Then understand simple information and make research if needed in case the language is simple enough. And for the 5th grade, this is A1+, A1+ level. So understands simple information and makes research if needed in case the language is simple enough. What does it mean, research? We will see in the book later. Now, assessment criteria. It's searches for specific information in the written task and recognizes familiar structures. This is what's written there in the presentation. And in the model program, we can see how it's evaluated for the 5th grade in general. What are the lengths of the texts and so on. And if we look at the book, for example, page 20, I guess 29 or 28 in Prepare Ukrainian Edition for grade 5, unit 3, My Home, lesson 4. When we look at this task, it says vocabulary and reading. Why so? This is also an interesting thing. It's not just reading, but vocabulary and reading, because reading becomes an instrument for use of English, and vice versa. We use English to read. In this case, we have an aim in the title of the task itself. Right. So according to the stages of reading lessons, the first would be generate learners' interest in the topic of the text. And what we do, I'd suggest before we open the book, before we start, play a game. My favorite game is about categories, but it might be tricky with your 5th graders. But categories, it's about when students stand in a circle, for example, or just sit in a classroom and work in a group of 3 or 4. One names a category and another has to name at least 3 things referring to this category. For example, living room, bookcase, table, window, bathroom, towel, and so on and so on. If we call the room in the house a category, another student has to say 3 things that can be found in this category. They can repeat that's fine, but try to be specific for each category. That's a nice game to spark their interest and activate as much vocabulary on this topic as possible. They already have it from the primary school. Now, when we open the book, we see the words and the pictures. What do we do with these words and pictures, and what is it for? First of all, this is our vocabulary, which will be essential for the reading tasks. Not bed, board game, bookcase, chair, and so on. Not for reading the whole story, but not all the unknown words in the text, but vocabulary that is essential for particular tasks. How we do it? We look at the new vocabulary, maybe something is not that new, and we ask students, for example, fill in the table. I know this word, I'm not sure about this word, I don't know this word. They fill it out on their own, and they match the pictures. Then they check it with the partner, and maybe their partner has something in the column I don't know, and I have it in the column I know. So I explain this word. I show it at the picture. Then we match. And check it with the audio. Where is the match task? Sorry, I think I didn't insert the match task here. Anyways, we match pictures to the words, we label them, or somehow we put it into our notebooks, and then check it together with the student. I found it. It's on the second line. So we match individually, check with the partner, check with the audio, with the correct answers recorded, and then close the book and, for example, play the memory game. So everybody closes the book and tries to name all the things on the page. That would be faster. They can do it in pairs or in groups, or this can be a collective work. Then miming. We can show something, show some piece of furniture to our partner and they can guess. Draw. draw it very schematically, so it's not a wonderful drawing that will take 2 lessons and then into the night, but something very simple, so they have to guess. It's called Pictionary. The game is called Pictionary. So one student can go to the board, draw something on the board, and other students in teams can be guessing it. Then get learners to predict what the text will say. We look at the picture, we already know some words, and we're trying to predict what the text will say. There are 3 pictures, what the text is about. That's a question to you, would be. The text is under the purple square, and you can see the pictures. There are 3 pictures. What the text will be about. Yeah, my house, but if we are more specific. We already know the topic, right? Rooms in the house, that's more specific. Bedroom, great. Okay, thanks a lot. So, all right, we predicted. Then set an easier reading task and a time limit at the beginning. Your rooms. Yeah, the text is about the rooms. Divide students in groups of 3. So we don't spend half of the lesson for reading all the texts. Our idea is to complete the task. This is how we master the skill. It's not about reading as many similar texts as possible. It's about mastering a skill on how it's done. So students go into 3 groups, into groups of 3, and each student reads his text 1, text 2, text 3, and matches it to the picture. Then they compare and explain why they chose this picture for their texts in the same group of 3. They can read it out in turns as well, so they show it where it is in the picture and why they chose this text. I will move faster a little bit with the presentation. So check, all learners compare answers in the task in pairs or small groups. Then they check answers as a class. Then you set a more challenging task and a time limit. Learners read and do the task. This one, for example, read the article again, or are the sentences right or wrong? So we do the true or false individually, and then discuss it with a partner, and then we search for the actual answers in the text. The point here is that first we read the text already, but for this task we will need to reread it, and it is better if we first answer everything and then reread, so we are focused on our answers, whether they are true or false, and then we correct if needed, and only then we discuss with partner and then as a class. After that we have we check, compare, check as a class, and then we work on their expression of the personal opinion or reaction to the text. Here we have talking points where students can answer the questions in turns in the same groups of 3 and discuss it all together, and then tell them what there is in their room and what they saw in these rooms, what was different, and so on. So something where they have to produce the language they've learned. And reading is a very complex skill. It's not just about decoding, and it's important to remember. Reading lessons have 3 main stages. I hope you remembered them or made a screenshot, or if interested, there will be the recording of this video and you will be able to rewatch. So three main stages. There are different types of reading, which is reading for gist, for specific information, and for detail. And at the lesson, we spark students' motivation to continue reading on their own. We don't use lessons for reading, especially reading in chain or in a line, but we are more focused on the tasks, but not on the process of reading itself for the sake of reading. All right. Remember, I showed you the pictures at the beginning where students, people were in their phones and then in their books. Another thing, messaging. Yeah, how messaging is happening now and how it used to be in 1871. Which is also different. And that leads us to the topic of communication, which I will be revealing at the webinar next Friday at 3 o'clock. It is called 7 Ways of Encouraging Teens to Speak. And you can sign up for this webinar if you're interested. You will all receive a contact form at the end of this webinar. And in this contact form, if you tick, yes, I'm interested in speaking webinar for teenagers, then I will send you more information where to register and how to join us next Friday. Please feel free to use our free downloadable Cambridge materials like Cambridge Life Competencies activity cards that will show you lots of new approaches to teaching language through life skills. Make sure that you already passed your test and went through all the materials on the new Ukrainian school platform for English teachers. There is a secondary block which you can already access and get your 10 hours official certificate after you go through the materials, read them, and answer correctly to all the test tasks. And if you want to learn more about Prepare Ukrainian Edition, you can scan this QR code and find it on our Publishing Linguist website, together with the audio, video samples, planning, yearly planning, and the course walkthrough. If you have any questions, which I haven't seen yet, I will be happy to answer those via email. You can email me, you can call me if needed, 9 to 6, Monday to Friday. And if you have some specific questions for now regarding this webinar, I will be happy to answer. Thank you very much. That's it for today from me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was not just entertaining, but also knowledgeable, also full of information that will help you and motivate you to teach reading properly and will motivate your students to read properly in these challenging times. Thank you very much.